We've asked Dr. Phil to join us tonight because, Dr. Phil, I think that you have a great relationship with law enforcement, and you're certainly dialed in on the issues that they're facing. But when you have 4 different deputies from the same department commit suicide in just 6 weeks of time, you got to be asking yourself, what in the world is going on?
Well, Kris, I think this is a cluster, and I do know Harris County law enforcement, and they're a wonderful group of men and women that have a really big job down there, and the Harris County Sheriff's Department is one of the few in the country that have a behavioral health unit that works with and helps their officers down there. So they're a great group, and they don't bury their head in the sand about this. And I just hate it that this has happened. 3 of the officers have finished their service, and 1 was an active officer. But I wish this was a shock. I wish it was a surprise. But suicide rates among law enforcement officers are about 58% higher than the general population, and it's no surprise. Look, there's a lot of stress and pressure in law enforcement, and when you actually look at the research associated with it, there aren't huge surprises there either. It's a high-pressure job, right? They put their lives on the line every single day. They work long hours. They work irregular shifts, and that's really draining. And frankly, over the last several years, there's been a feeling of isolation and conflict with society because law enforcement has been getting a really bad rap with all the defund the police over the last several years, that kind of attitude. So they've kind of been hung out and not had a great relationship and respect from society that I think they deserve. So it's been a difficult time for law enforcement, and I think still is.
What is it, though, that gets someone to the point in their life where they feel suicide, ending life, is the only option?
Well, you know, I think it's different for a lot of people, but when you're in a high-stress situation like law enforcement, you sometimes can feel like you've just run out of options. You've run out of coping energy. You've run out of coping resources. And with these individuals, you know, PTSD is double what you see in the general population. And think about this. Life-altering circumstances and situations, crises, most people in their lifetime might encounter this once or twice. Law enforcement officers deal with this daily, and it takes a cumulative effect where they can really feel emotionally bankrupt and just feel like, you know, I don't have anything else to fight back with. And one of the problems that I worry about is that there's still a stigma associated with talking about feelings, thoughts, ideation about suicide. I think there's still a stigma associated in all organizations, including law enforcement, of talking about mental health needs, any kind of mental illness, anxiety, depression, loneliness. So if you're trying to progress up the ladder and you reach out for help, you feel like that can slow your progress, that can go in your record, and if you're being considered for promotion, you feel like, well, you know, that's going to show a weakness, and I think that could slow my progress. So I think sometimes that stigma can cause people to not reach out for help, that if they got it early on, they wouldn't run out of coping energy, they wouldn't run out of coping skills. But that stigma, I fear sometimes in all competitive environments, causes people not to reach out for the help that would be there for them because they fear it could really retard their growth and slow down their progress in their career. You
bring up a fascinating point, and what I want our viewers to obviously realize, and those who watch your network know this and watch your programs for decades know this, but you are one of the most trusted, well-respected mental health professionals in the world. And the reality is, Dr. Phil, life is hard. Life is stressful, and no one is perfect. But there may be this unfair perception that when you wear a badge, you got everything put together. But the reality is, if you're brave enough to run towards someone with a gun, you can also be bold enough to say, you know what, I need to talk to someone, right?
Well, there's no question about it, Kris, and you really stated eloquently, because having the bravery of a firefighter, for example, to run into a burning building when everybody else is running out, or for a police officer to run towards gunfire or to run towards conflict, or for the military to run into a war zone, run towards conflict. These are brave men and women. There's no doubt about that. But it's not without a cost. It takes a toll on these men and women in uniform. And we have to be sure that we can help them with all of those burdens that you see, but we also have to help them with those burdens that you don't see, the conflicts that are going on inside. And sometimes it's, you wait for them to raise their hand and say, hey, this is really getting heavy here and I need some help. I think we need to be more proactive and say, common sense tells us that because of what you do, you have to be burning up coping energies and coping skills. So we're bringing you help. We're not going to wait for you to ask for it. We're going to bring you stress management strategies. We're going to bring you the mental health resources that you don't need to ask for. We know from looking at what you do that we need to deliver. We don't need to wait for you to ask. We need to proactively bring you the resources that we just assume you need based on what you do. We don't need to wait for you to raise your hand. We need to raise it for you. We need to bring this to you in advance. And it's not a weakness. It takes courage to accept help. And it's not that people need it, it's that they deserve it. And these men and women in uniform deserve us recognizing that they need and deserve to have the kind of support to help cope with things that most people see once or twice in their life. These people see on a daily basis, and we need to help them decompress and help them deal with these things. And I worry now in Harris County, for example, they've lost 4 of their fellow officers. They're going to need help in knowing how to process that, and so do their families. So this should be dealt with in a very proactive way, and I have every confidence that the Harris County Sheriff down there is going to do exactly that.
Yeah, Dr. Phil, you bring great context to these societal issues, to be frank. And when I think of how I can help, for example, right? You nailed it, because if you are dealing with a police officer, you are dealing with a stressful situation. There's a reason that police are involved, and every situation that they respond to is just that, right? We have little to no, daily interaction with police unless we're in big trouble. But every hour of their day is putting out a fire, dealing with a stressful situation. Is it as simple as someone on the street saying, hey, you know what? Thank you for what you do. Hey, you know what? We're really grateful that you put your life on the line every morning when you leave your house. Is that helpful?
Kris, I can't tell you how much that means. I've had so many officers. Just recently, Chief Shell, who is over 35,000 officers in the NYPD, said to me, it means so much if somebody, when they see a police officer on the street or just in the car next to them at a traffic light or whatever, will just make eye contact and say, hey, thank you for what you do. and that it goes a long way, because that officer may be in the 6th or 7th hour of overtime. They may not have seen their family for 18 hours. They may have been on their feet forever. They may be burning the candle at both ends, and people driving by and yelling pig or whatever, and just have somebody to just say, hey, let me tell you something. And it sounds trite to say, hey, thank you for your service. That gets said a lot to military or something, almost like hello. Mm-hmm. But to actually make eye contact and say, hey, thank you for what you do and for putting that uniform on every day and standing in the gap. There's a lot of us out here that appreciate you, and maybe we don't say it enough, but I just wanted to say it to you, so thank you for what you do. I never pass a police officer on the street that I don't stop and shake their hand and say hello. And I travel around with folks a lot, and you ask anybody that I travel with, it doesn't matter how cold it is or if it's raining or whatever, if there's an officer over to the side or by a building or whatever, I stop and step over there and shake their hand and say, hey, Dr. Phillips wanted to say hello and tell you how much I appreciate you guys doing what you do. Men, women, whatever, I always say thank you for what you do, and let me tell you, they always appreciate it.
Yeah, kindness goes a long way in our society. Dr. Phil, thank you, as always, for the additional context tonight.
Appreciate it, Kris.